Mercedes is secretly testing the new rocket engine. In the Brazil Grand Prix, the Mercedes car was noticeably faster than anyone would have ever expected. While the superb skills of Hamilton were a factor in that race, what stole the show was the performance of the Mercedes car. This got people asking where they got that extra power from, or whether there had been a secret upgrade. It is more of the latter because Mercedes reworked their engine, which is now fittingly referred to as the rocket engine or the spicy engine. So, in this video, we shall look into the details of the spicy engine and see where it fits into the future of Mercedes. Ordinarily, in a given year, a racing team cannot run more than 3 engines per year without attracting penalties. To circumvent this, they worked out a system by running their engine for 7 races, after which they can change. The only exception to this is Mercedes. They recently started changing their engine after 3 races. One might be surprised that Mercedes did not replace the $10 million engine they used in the 2020 season. They simply modified it to maximize its capabilities, but for a shorter period compared to other F1 engines. So, if this was such a great thing, why did other companies not follow suit? The answer to that question is that engines are prone to wearing out after consistent usage. Thus, the harder you use an F1 engine, the faster they wear out, which could lead to significant performance drops or even outright engine failures. Therefore, it does not pay other racing teams to use an engine that will wear quickly. Here we see a common F1 scenario where a car burns out after going through the rigors of a race. So the amount of time an engine can last depends on how hard you can push it, and how much pushing such an engine can take before it starts returning deficits in its performance. Another reason why it would make little sense to copy Mercedes is that other teams don't have a driver that they can take advantage of the engine, like Lewis Hamilton. There is no point in taking grid penalties you can't recover from, though another driver that can pull this off is Max Verstappen. However, it does not seem that Red Bull is opting for using a rocket engine, which we feel is a missed opportunity in Formula One. After all, the only thing that would be more exciting than one spicy engine on a racetrack is 2 spicy engines. Save for some software tweaking in some places, there was no physical change, addition or replacement to the spicy engine. They just adjusted how hard they could push the engine to produce the performance needed to effectively top the race. So, by the time Lewis Hamilton showed up with the spicy engine in Brazil, they had an engine with a short lifespan that could only be used for a couple of races, which, in itself, was not enough to start putting strain and wear on the engine. In other words, Mercedes turned up the notch for the last few races they had left, even though they were banned from using party mode and different engine changes during the race weekend. However, this ban only applies during the race weekend. Mercedes decided to be smart about the process by only making the relevant engine mode and engine map changes between the weekends. This type of engine makes it possible to have a lot of uses for the engine for several miles. The engine itself has units of life that cannot be used as much as a driver likes, and has to be systematically utilized throughout a race and ultimately over the lifespan of the engine. The rate at which these engines wear out is ridiculously fast. Mercedes' engine lost about 80 horsepower on its powertrain back in 2014, but as time went on, the engineers began to understand the engine better. They refined the engine to a point where it does not lose as much power or face as much wear as it used to before. The cause of this drop in performance is usually a result of a lack of sealing. Also, deficits start to accumulate in the piston and valves in the inlet and exhaust traps. The regulations put on the driving team ensures that all car engines come with a seal that prevents any form of adjustment to the engine, barring a probe with a borescope and some other minor changes. Nothing else can be done in an engine. Mercedes made a big but almost sure bet on the backdrop of this. The F1 race company used an engine for only 3 races as opposed to other F1 cars that changed their engine after their 7th race, which allowed them to get the most out of the engine and change it up before the performance started setting in. The use of the engine for only 3 races gave them the sheer power to beat rivals Red Bull, but it came with the cost of getting penalized by heavy grid penalties. Mercedes bet on the fact that the end should justify the means, which implies that they were more than ready to take these heavy grid penalties. It might have looked like Lewis Hamilton had a faster car, suggesting a better engine. But this was not the case. Mercedes simply sacrificed the lifespan of their 2020 engine, basically overclocking it so they could get the most performance out of it. With this car in the hands of the talented Lewis Hamilton, Mercedes was way ahead of the rest of the competition except Max Verstappen, who was the only one who could keep pace with the Mercedes driver. The 2 drivers effectively dominated that race, and this was one of the reasons that came together to ensure that Mercedes had a great end to their campaign in the 2021 season. Another reason for their success was the effective use of the sprint race held on Saturday to secure a 5th after coming back from behind, which was as impressive as it was important because it meant he would not suffer as much in the Sunday race. But after that, the penalty was paid off, and Lewis Hamilton still had a bigger engine than Red Bull's Max. It would seem that Mercedes is ready to take the engine penalty and start at the back because they expect that the skill of their star driver, Hamilton, combined with a big engine, was more than enough to secure them a guaranteed top spot. Hamilton has delivered on this quite well in Brazil and other races that have taken place after Brazil. The Mercedes game plan seems to be foolproof, because they must have known that the engine penalties incurred did not count in the cost regulation, and it will not affect other future races that Mercedes compete in. The best part for Mercedes is that their budget is not capped or limited by any of the numerous regulations. The implication is that they can direct the money to develop the spicy engine. So there is a good chance that the 2022 Mercedes car might come with a spicier engine than it did in the 2021 season, which would give Hamilton all he needs to turn up the heat for other racers. The regulation for the power unit are largely unchanged. This works in Mercedes' favor, and even the changes in the regulations don't affect them adversely. One of the changes is that the cars will start running on E10 biofuel fuel. This is a kind of fuel made of 10% ethanol, which comes from renewable sources. This type of fuel will bring an inevitable reduction in the performance of the car. But over time, engineers will be able to tweak their software to make the most of the car's performance. The current spec of the Mercedes car can be used in 2022 and would still be sufficiently fixed until the new regulations arrive in 2026. The teams are barred from making adjustments to the physical structure of the engine in between races. The reason being that the FDI tightly seals the engine. However, they are allowed to make changes in any area before the season starts. Using one engine for a couple of races doesn't sound so bad until one starts to consider the amount of strain just a single race puts on an F1 car's engine. This is why F1 teams specifically make each component of an F1 car to aid in the performance of F1 cars. Interestingly, the F1 team can change and modify the software at their discretion. In this area, F1 engine makers and engineers can take advantage of their engines because they can effectively direct energy flow to where it is needed the most. The question now is if the Mercedes engineers can solve the performance issues that come with the new fuel in time for the 2022 season. Then we might see another exciting season for Lewis Hamilton. What do you think about the Mercedes rocket engine? Do you think it will help them dominate future races? Let us know what you think in the comments section. And don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this channel to get more videos and click the bell icon to enable notifications.